So Bernie's best moment in the debate with Joe Biden is when he just casually obliterated his record. He went through it with quite a few specifics. And yeah, Bernie is an honest dude, and he likes Joe Biden, and so the only way he's comfortable going after him is simply by stating the facts of his record in a dry way. You voted for this, you voted for this, you voted for this, you voted for this. And yeah, in this clip, I think it's powerful, and it lands.
This is a little bit about leadership as well. Joe talked about bankruptcy. Joe, if my memory is correct, you helped write that bankruptcy bill.
I did not.
All right. And that bankruptcy bill, by the way, when we talk about education, we got 45 million people in America struggling with student debt. Some of them really struggling with student debt. And that bankruptcy bill made it impossible, very difficult for people to escape from that student debt. It was a very, very bad bill. You said, Joe, that a majority of the people in the Senate voted for it. You're right.
Overwhelming majority.
Overwhelmingly. Well, I voted against it in the House, and I was right. And I don't have to rethink my position, because that's what leadership is about, having the guts to take an unpopular vote. But it's not just bankruptcy. The difference between Joe and I on higher education is 4 years ago. It was not a popular idea, Joe. I'm glad you're coming around now. 4 years ago, when I said that public colleges and universities should be tuition free, people were saying, Bernie, that's a radical idea. Well, you got states and cities and counties all over the country that are moving in that direction. And I'm glad that Joe is on board. But what leadership is about is going forward when it's not popular, when it's an idea that you get criticized for. So I'm proud of that fact, and I'm proud of my leadership on many issues. Joe, since the campaign, has come around. I talked about raising that minimum wage $15 an hour 4 years ago, Joe.
So did I, and I went out and
$15 an hour?
$15 an hour, New York City. Go talk to the governor.
I will talk to the governor. I'm not aware of that.
All right?
I am not aware of that.
You should be aware. Look.
All right. 4 years ago, it was a radical idea. Very few people in Congress were talking about it.
Go ahead, Vice President.
Well, here, look. Let's get something straight about the bankruptcy bill. The bankruptcy bill already, it did not affect student debt for 90% because the law had already been passed. You could not declare bankruptcy for those loans that were from private institutions. You couldn't do it. And so the bankruptcy bill didn't affect that. It affected 10% of the people, the first bankruptcy bill, 10% of the student loans, number one. Number two, now we're in a position where we're able to correct that problem. The fact is, if I hadn't stepped up and changed the law as it relates to people making less than $50,000, those who for alimony and child support, then guess what? They would have been in the bucket too. It was going to pass anyway. I made it. Let me finish. I made it incrementally better. I did not like the bill. I did not support the bill, and I made it clear to the industry I didn't like the bill. Number two, this bill now calls for the opportunity to fundamentally change the mistakes we couldn't correct in the bill the first time around. And that is why I support Elizabeth Warren's idea. And it's a very good idea.
Senator Sanders, go ahead.
Well, this is kind of circular logic. We're going to reform the bill that I voted for. Well, if you hadn't voted for it, and if you had rallied other people, as I try to do in the House voting against it, we might not have the problems with it we have today. You know, what leadership is about, Joe, and it deals with, whether, your opposition or your support, I should say, regarding gay communities and the so-called Defense of Marriage Act. You remember that bill, right? You remember the Defense of Marriage Act. It was, gay marriage today is considered a little bit differently than it was 25 years ago. I remember that vote. It was a very hard vote. I voted against the Defense of Marriage Act. You voted for it. I voted against the bankruptcy bill. You voted for it. I voted against the war in Iraq, which was also a tough vote. You voted for it. I voted against disastrous trade agreements like NAFTA and PNTR with China, which cost this country over 4 million good-paying jobs. You voted for it. I voted against the Hyde Amendment, which denies low-income women the right to get an abortion. You have consistently voted for it. I don't know what your position is on it today, but you have consistently voted for it. In other words, all that I'm saying here, we can argue about the merits of the bill.
Vice President Biden.
It takes courage sometimes to do the right thing.
the best part of that was probably when Bernie says, "Oh, so now you're talking about reforming the bill that you voted for. Well, if you didn't vote for it in the first place, we wouldn't have needed that reform." That was a great point. It landed. It was good. Biden looks like a deer in headlights as he's getting clobbered with his own record. And the thing about Biden, man, and this is upsetting, but it's true, he's a good BSer. That's what he is. And he says things in a very confident tone, even though he's full of it. But oftentimes, unfortunately, the confident tone overrides everything to a lot of voters, especially older voters who will not fact-check everything they just heard there. Bernie is totally right on all the substance there. Older voters won't care. They like Joe, and they're like, yeah, I like him, and he seems confident, and he's electable, and so I'll vote for him. It really is disastrous. But Joe lied repeatedly. He said, Bernie says, hey, if my memory serves me correctly, you helped write that bankruptcy bill. He said, I did not. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. But he just says the opposite and just overrides it with his confidence. Like, no, I didn't do that, but you did do it. But I say I didn't. We really live in a strange world where it's just a battle of narratives. Honestly, this reminds me a lot of what Trump did early in March in the early days of the pandemic here. He was just like, yeah, we contained it, almost contained it, near zero, and it's just like the flu. It's no big deal. And he was just like trying to override the reality. It's like the ultimate form of postmodernism. Override the reality by controlling the narrative and just be aggressive with it. And in some instances, you can get away with it. And in other instances, reality smacks you in the face, like with the pandemic. In this instance, though, he's probably going to get away with it because the media is not on Bernie's side, and they will not fact-check Biden, and they will not follow it up. So he did help write the bankruptcy bill, and you're never going to hear about this again because they're just going to leave it at that. Oh, Bernie says he did, Biden says he didn't. Let's leave it at that and move on. Well, you're doing the voters a disservice that way. The other lie, which really got under my skin, Biden said, oh, yeah, I supported the $15 minimum wage. I was there. I talked to the governor of New York or whatever. Biden supported a $12 minimum wage, not a $15 minimum wage. So again, he's lying, and he's casually lying. And you heard Bernie say, $15? And Biden was like, yes. No, it's 12. We have a record of it. In 2015, Biden was pushing for a $12 minimum wage. So, I think Bernie does a great job here. Again, I just wish there was more aggression. And I wish there was, he said stuff like, that's a lie. And media, are you going to fact check that? Because I'm right and he's wrong. I would have loved to see that. And yeah, I think this was the best moment in the debate because he goes through Joe's entire record, clobbers him over the head with it. Biden has nowhere to go but to BS nonstop. And you can only hope that voters are intelligent enough to see the reality and do the right thing. Unfortunately, with the numbers as they are right now, that's not looking likely. And we will have missed out on the opportunity of a lifetime with a once-in-a-lifetime candidate. But I can't wait to vote for Bernie here in New York, assuming the election isn't postponed because of the pandemic. I hope everybody else out there as well can't wait to vote for Bernie because it feels good when you do it, when you know you're voting for somebody who agrees with you on the policies, you're voting for social democracy, you're voting for Medicare for all and free college and a living wage and ending the wars, you're voting for a principled voice who's been right about this stuff all along. And you won't catch me dead voting for a person who shamelessly lies like Biden does and has a horrific record.